Saddle-Natomy, the first class in our School of Tack classroom series. I'm going to show you a few different things today. We'll get rid of that. All right, so we're first going to take a look at the different trees of English saddles. Now, this is not a complete list by any means. There's hundreds of different tree makers and different saddle makers between English and Western. This is just a few examples of what we've collected over the last couple of years in our consignment tack shop. So the first thing I want to show you is an import, or what we call one of the no-namer saddles, and its tree, and we've taken this apart. I should say Kennedy and the girls have helped take things apart. So that's the top layer, the seat, and there'll be lots of different kinds of construction on these. What we're seeing here is a wooden tree. It is not laminated. It doesn't have any protective waterproofing. It's just a crudely made wooden tree that's surprisingly intact for how much it's been abused. See our making of video for this being run over by a truck. But it is a crudely made, this is cork, really old cork that they use for padding and to kind of smooth things out, covered by foam. And then it also had some of this like almost dryer lint looking flocking undersides and top side under the seat. So that's what was giving the cushion to this saddle. Kind of turn it around so you could see. And then we'll compare this to a well-made, or an example of a well-made tree as well. So you can see that the head of the saddle is just a piece of aluminum, very thin and able to bend, so not giving much structure or support to the horse or the rider when it's being used. This webbing does actually go all the way around the tree, so the billets were actually safely grounded to the top of this tree, which is kind of good. Sometimes you'll just see the billets being attached by one single nail that's holding the rider to the top of the saddle. So this tree, you can see, has a whole bunch of cracking in it, and it was cracked before we destroyed it. When we test the saddles that we bring on consignment, we flex the trees and look for popping sounds, cracking sounds, or just signals that the tree is not moving properly. And so this one was definitely not one we would have taken on consignment anyway, because we don't take the no-name saddles just for that reason. But it was a really good example of a broken tree. So there's lots of different cracks that you can see in this one. The panels of the saddle were kind of surprising. So these are the panels that would be sitting next to the horse. And I would have thought that it was a really compacted wool flocking, but it was actually an old foam pad. So that's what would have been going onto the horse. And as you can see, there's not a lot of great shaping for the horses, for the contact on the horse's back. It's actually rounded here, which would have created quite a pressure point. You know, just this yellow point would have been touching the horse. The rest of this would have been up off of the horse's back. So it would have been quite a pinchy little saddle. So we'll get that out of the way, and let me show you an example of a better made tree. So the quality of the leather was one of the first things we noticed on this one. And we did dismantle it, we dissected it. The tree actually was intact, but it had just shown so much use that it wasn't one we're going to take on consignment. The seams were starting to go. So there's the top seat on that one. It was covered with multiple layers of leather and then a foam seat pad. And then there's a lot of webbing on this one, holding the billets on, creating a ground seat that the rider would be sitting on. And there was a lot of layers happening. Watch out for nails. Good thing I've had my tetanus shot. Let's flip this over so you can see the difference in the trees. Like I said, there are so many different kinds of trees now. This is just a standard old metal head, and you can see the thickness difference, how that's going to keep its shape instead of collapsing. The tree itself, you can see that is layers of wood that are shaped and not just one solid wood piece. So it's a laminated tree. It does have a coating on it, so it's waterproofed. And it was covered with a fiberglass material for structure and waterproofing as well. Instead of the other tree that just had aluminum pieces to give it structure and spring, there's fixed points The stirrup bars are fixed with really good hardware instead of just aluminum rivets like the other little saddle. These are wood with leather and then a leather padded point. So that's what's going on the horse. They're not going to be as sharp as just the little short wood points would be. Well-made billets, webbed, and then this was connected over the top of the saddle with webbing and leather for the rider's safety. So there's a lot going on a better made saddle, and this is just one example. Like I said, there's a ton of different kinds of trees, but this one's definitely more, let's say, better example of a well-made saddle. Here's a few of the other pieces. So this was the underside of the gullet. And we're looking here, the tree would sit on top of these. And then underneath, the part that's going to go on the horse would be your panels. So that's the underside of the panels. And these are what held all of the flocking in. So there's a lot of different materials that are used to pad next to the horse. This one was full of wool flocking. And there's also different materials and grades of wool. So this is a fairly coarse wool, and it was shoved in there really tight, and of course it's smoothed over, but you can tell how this really balled up, where if it was flocked poorly, you could get a pressure point in the panels of your saddle. So there's a whole bunch, this whole bag made up the two panels of the saddle. And then you can tell that this saddle had some work done to it because this is a different kind of wool, and it's a lot softer, and it was on top of the original flocking. So this one had some re-leveling, and this is really soft. If you could feel through this screen, you could feel that this is a lot more soft, and it's able to be layered a lot more evenly instead of being where you'd get kind of a hard rock of wool that compresses. This fleece was layered a lot more evenly, so you get a better contact with your horse and less pressure points. So that's what was inside. Let me show you the flaps, then we'll go on to the Wintec saddle as well. Still attached. All right. So this is one of the knee rolls. And what's making it up is this compressed kind of a gel foam. And then underneath on the panels, this would be the sweat flap that's going next to the horse. That's where this knee roll went. That's the top of the knee roll. And anything else that I'm missing? This little pocket is where the points of that little leather flexible points of the saddle tree went. So it would go on top. A lot of different pieces that go into the making of an English saddle. Last one I'm going to show you is the Wintec saddle. Go this direction. So this is a synthetic. Hi. This is a synthetic saddle. So instead of leather, this is a vinyl material that is leather-like. If we peel this back, this is the tree of a Wintec saddle, and it's completely plastic. So Wintecs fit a lot of different kinds of horses to a point. They do have an interchangeable gullet, and that's just this part. And so here's a couple examples of different gullet sizes. What's in it is the medium bar, and then you can go to a medium narrow or a narrow. And then you can also go wider as well. And what that's going to do is change the front width and angle. It doesn't change anything back here behind the tree, but for horses that are growing, or you just need something that will fit, you know, if you changed a horse would fit moderately well, that is a possibility to get some more fit potential for different horses. But you just have to be aware with these, that's not going to change how the back of the saddle fits, it just changed the head. So I just wanted to show you a few things on this saddle. This one came in for consignment and we weren't able to take it because the points of the tree had been broken, and those can be replaced on a Wintec, but on a saddle in this condition, it just wasn't worth it. So these would be what gave you flexibility to the bars and helped it sit around the horse well. So without those points, it would just be putting pressure on the sides of the horse's back. And there's a few other things on this saddle that were also falling apart just due to age. One of them was that there was a connecting piece of plastic that's molded to hold the front, I should say the top and the bottom of the saddle together. Here's the panels of the Wintec. Just be loud. So this particular one, you can see all the staples that's holding the top and the bottom panels together. So this particular one, these molded plastic fiberglassy pieces that are the seat for the top of the saddle were all crumbling. And so without those, it just makes the seat unstable. And so the horse wouldn't be getting good contact with the rider. And for the age and condition of the saddle, it just wasn't worth fixing. So it got donated to science. And then here's the flocking on a wool flocked Wintec, older Wintec. And you can see the difference. This is more just a poly and wool blend versus the 100% wool fleece that was giving you the padding on the horse's back. And then here's the back of the panels. So that's the sweat flap. It's just synthetic, and these panels would be against your horse. So we really enjoyed dissecting the saddles and being able to see what's inside. We hope you enjoyed that too. And just remember, this is not an exhaustive list of the types of saddles. There's a whole bunch out there, and we were just able to take apart a few. And what we try to look for in the saddles we take on consignment is safety for the horse and for the rider, and of course comfort. So follow us on the other videos to see more about safety checking and what we'd be looking for in a consignment at Hightail Tech. Okay, part 2 of Saddle-Natomy. This is going to be our safety check and just a couple examples of broken trees and good trees. So first thing we have here is one of the import no-name saddles that we wouldn't recommend buying or selling. So this is an example of what would be inside of a no-name saddle. And we first wanted to show you that this is a broken tree. So when saddles come in, we give them a safety check and check several different things. One of them is to feel the flex of the tree, so we can feel how it responds. This one, if you could see and hear through the screen, you'd hear cracking, flexing in the seat that's not quite normal. And then I can show you what I'm feeling here, looking at the head of the saddle. First thing is you can see that there's metal poking through, so we know that the head of that saddle has been damaged, and you can see the flexing side to side of this tree. I'm going to put it against the table so you can really see it. We would do this on a saddle stand gently to a saddle that's coming in on consignment. This one we know is broken, so if you watch, that shouldn't be giving. That means that the horse would be getting a whole lot of pressure on the points of the saddle. It's the head is not holding its shape. And if you look up here, if you look at from the top, you can see how there's a whole bunch of wrinkling in the leather. So we know that this head of the saddle is broken. And when we push it, it creaks and cracks and flexes, and it's just lost its shape. So the tree is definitely broken. The other thing on this one is we opened up the panels because we can feel this hard rocks, and this foam has degraded to the point that it's just turned into crumbly. We call this the cheese saddle. It looks like crumbling cheese in the flaps. So one other example. You see that okay? Okay. We'll try not to tip it over the table. Try to treat saddles with respect, whether they're broken or not. Okay, so this is actually a well-made saddle, but we took it in for consignment, and it came in, we weren't able to take it because it also has a broken tree. So one telltale sign is a piece of metal. You can see that sticking through the pommel there. And then when we do the flex test on this one, if we're pulling against it to kind of feel how the tree is, if it's stable or not, we could feel that it was just collapsing as well, like that other little one. I'm gonna stand up on the table. If I fall off just edit. There we go. Can we see it? Okay. So that one is not supposed to collapse. It's actually broken in the head of the saddle here, so that tree is giving, and this 2 panels are going. And this one's really tricky. You can't see it. You can't really feel it from the top of the saddle. You can just feel it from the bars. And it's been really well flocked, so it was kind of invisible at first, but that's a telltale sign of the head of the tree being broken. Right. These are all saddles that were taken in to be put on consignment and we weren't able to take for various reasons. I thought I'd show you the differences between a few different types of trees and some of the features that we feel are safe and some that are unsafe, just for awareness. This is not an exhaustive list of the types of trees that are out there. There's hundreds of makers and hundreds of trees. And what we try to do is take quality consignments that are safe to the best of our ability to check. So here's a couple different. This first one is a double T tree, say that 5 times fast. And what we did with the help of my wonderful husband is, there's a plug for that. So he cut down so you could see a cross section of the saddle. The metal post is just put in with fiberglass, and as you can see, this whole tree is just fiberglass. And we'll let Kennedy kind of do a cross section and show you what's inside some of these off-brand saddles. So a lot of times customers will bring a saddle in and we're not able to take it just for safety reasons. We want to be able to take trees that are solid and that we know are going to have the rigging and the things that are holding the saddle on the horse and holding the rider on the saddle that will be safe and secure. So as you can see, this is hollow, it's fiberglass. There's like a bubble wrap type coating here and then foam. So that's what you're sitting on. And then the rigging, screw, all of the attachments for the leather and hardware are just glued into this or stapled or screwed into this very thin piece of fiberglass. And so what we've seen in our consignments and just experienced throughout the years is that sometimes the seams on these will be very, very thin and we'll get broken cantles, broken pommels. We'll seen trees that have actually split apart from just normal wear and tear, or if a horse has a buck, that they'll just break under the pressure or fenders will fall off. So like, again, this is just the views of myself and experience that I've had. Some double T saddles, if used lightly, might be fine for years, but just to bring awareness to what you might be riding. So this is a tree that we wouldn't be able to take on consignment because we try to take solid trees. Let me show you an example of a different kind of tree right over here. So this is a very old Longhorn brand saddle. It is not able to be consigned just because the leather has been dry rotted and old. And anytime you have black around hardware, it means that that leather is actually rotting out. And if we go to the other rigging, you can actually see that the rigging plate did rip out on this saddle. And so if we see excessive black or cracking, that would be an indicator that the saddle is not safe. You can see that that rigging plate just is ready to pull off. And of course, that wouldn't be safe to cinch up onto a horse. And then the same thing on these, what we call the leathers, the half leathers that go around the tree to hold your stirrup on. These also had black and were cracking, and it just turns into almost a cardboard consistency where that wouldn't be safe. You wouldn't be able to hold the stirrup on your horse. So let's show you a couple more pieces of this tree if we want to zoom in. I've taken this one apart. There's a lot of hardware that goes into a well-made tree. And so we have a very secure seat, some padding, the leather top. And if we peel this back, we're not going into an extensive list of how to build a saddle. This is, again, just to kind of demonstrate the differences between builds and trees and safety. So there's another leather, the strainer that builds the ground seat of the saddle. And then as you can see, this is a solid wooden tree, and we took a cross section out of it so you could see the grain of the wood and the layers that were used to make this tree. And then it's wrapped in fiberglass for waterproofing. This is a fiberglass layer. Sometimes these wooden trees will be wrapped in rawhide and laced for strength and waterproofing. Sometimes they'll have like a polymer type epoxy that they're made out of. Some trees are actually made of solid like fiberglass resin, or you might have heard the term rawhide tree. That was a fiberglass tree made by the Rawhide company for years and years. So this is a fiberglass covered wooden tree, and everything is secured into solid tree that, you know, with screws, leather, sometimes staples. You'll often see nails. And show you a couple other pieces of it from this side. So this is the bottom skirt that would be against the horse, covered in fleece for a little bit of cushioning. And then it's secured with screws or pieces of leather to keep it all tight. And then this is what you're seeing for the tree. So again, lots of different kinds of saddles. This just happens to be a really sturdy old tree, and it's still sound and secure. The thing that made this one be unusable was just the condition of the leather, and it could have been restored with enough work and time and money, but the owner decided to donate this one for science just so we could see more about safety. So a couple of these ones down here came in for consignment and we weren't able to take them. So this is a good example of a solid tree. This was a circle Y tree. So that's what the skeleton of a Western saddle could look like. This particular one was still built and it felt pretty good except for too much movement. When we do a safety check, we check to see if there's excessive movement or cracking or anything that should not be moving that's moving. And this one had a loose cantle, so we took it apart just to check what was going on. And as you can see, the loose cantle was because it had a crack all the way across on both sides. And so this one really felt loose when you pushed on the cantle. And that could have happened for a number of reasons. It could have been, you know, a horse could have gone over on it and popped it. It could have been in a wreck. It could have fallen off of something. So even a really well-made tree, like this one's a rawhide covered fiberglass tree, you know, can get broken. So it's good to safety check these. Here's a couple others that came in. This is a no-name, the Cordura is what it's called when it's this nylon covering, and there's different brands that do Cordura saddles. Some of them are really well made on really solid trees. Some of them are not. This is a hollow tree, just like what was in the double T saddle. So not one we would take on consignment. This particular one, we were safety checking for the owners, and of course, as you can see, it wasn't solid. It was creaking and cracking in the tree under the seat, and then once they knew it wasn't safe, they went ahead and donated it to us as well. And we ran over this one with a truck just so we could see what's inside. And as you can see, it's hollow all the way through. Just another angle. Hello. And this one's padded with foam as well. So this is a Circle Y. And oh, there goes the double T. Down she goes. So this is another one that had just a little bit too much flex in the tree, so we knew it wasn't safe. So we peeled it up, took a look at it, and it had a break. Can you see it? I'll go ahead and flex it so you can see that crack. So there are flex tree saddles that are made with layers of different materials that are supposed to flex. This one was not supposed to flex. So they're a really well-made saddle, but it's just always good to check your saddle for safety no matter what brand it is. There's the half of the double T. This one came in covered in vet wrap. It's not one we'd normally take just because we knew what tree was inside of it by safety checking it, but it was a great example of what happens if you try to rope off of a saddle that's not a roping saddle. This whole swell pommel area is loose and broken. So I hope you enjoyed looking at a couple different kinds of saddle trees, and keep watching us for more videos with Saddle-Natomy.